My topic is topic number 7, USA presidential powers. My topic question is, should the president be assigned more powers or less powers? Compare and contrast the powers the president has to 2 other democratic world leaders. So my answer to this question is, granting the president fewer powers will prevent the abuse of authority. I have 2 arguments in support of my claim. My first argument is that less powers being assigned to the president will prevent the abuse of authority by allowing for a more effective system of checks and balances. Less powers being given to the president will create a more effective system of checks and balances. One big thing is executive orders. It's like the president making rules without checking or getting any congressional approval. So this has been increasing since the early 20th century. And these executive orders are very powerful because they can push policies that Congress doesn't really agree with. Professor Douglas Amy points out that sometimes these orders are a way for the president to force policies that Congress wouldn't support. There are also other powers, like the president letting federal agencies make rules without Congress agreeing. So past presidents like Trump has used this, and it can be seen as an abuse of authority since it is not in the interest of the people. So in countries like France, it's the opposite, and the president has a lot less power and has to get approval from Parliament for basically every major decision. But there's a really strict yet effective system of checks and balances, which prevents abuse of power and rash policy making. My next argument is that less powers assigned to the president will prevent the abuse of authority by encouraging more inclusive decision making. Less powers being assigned to the United States president will encourage more inclusive decision making. According to Professor Amy, U.S. presidents tend to be kind of on their own a lot, not really wanting to cooperate with Congress, and they're actually in opposition with a lot of the government bodies, since if another body of government is an opposing party, they'll usually be opposing each other a lot rather than collaborating. So this lack of collaboration and input from other government entities could lead to decisions being driven solely by preferences of the president. So in countries like India, it's the complete opposite, and it's actually required that the president collaborates with different government bodies. So the Indian president will act on the advice of his ministers and representatives. So in getting all this input, it really creates an effective government because it allows for diverse perspectives and policies that focus their interests around the people rather than the interests of an individual person. So it prevents the concentration of power in the hands of one person, and a system like India's really just shows the benefits of the president holding less power. Conclusion. My research demonstrates the need for lessening the amount of presidential powers in order to prevent the abuse of authority. Through my findings, I have discovered that lessening the powers of the president will result in a more effective system of checks and balances for the United States. I've discovered this by pointing out the negatives of presidential powers that lack congressional approval and comparing the president to the French system of government. I found that the French presidency had a more strict yet effective system of checks and balances that prevented the abuse of authority. In addition, through my findings, I've also discovered that assigning less presidential powers will result in a more collaborative, inclusive government. I came to this finding by comparing the lack of collaboration within the U.S. presidency to presidency in India. I found that India's president seeks advice from multiple government entities, fostering decision-making that accounts for diverse perspectives and thus preventing abuse of power. All of my findings and research answer my research question: should the president be assigned more powers or less powers, by highlighting the downsides of the president's immensely powerful position and comparing it to presidencies in 2 other countries. These methods clearly answer the question by providing support towards my claim. In conclusion, my research pertains to my thesis statement. It does this by providing valid supporting evidence and effectively connecting it to the importance of limiting the presidency and ultimately averting abuse of power.